Hello and welcome to Season 3 of Wholala, a Dog2 podcast. I'm Sam.
And I'm Alasdair, and this season we're diving full throttle into the new era of Doctor Who.
Join us each week as we look back on pivotal episodes that lead us to the 60th and catch up on things you may have missed along the way.
It won't be quiet, it won't be straight, and it won't be calm. But I'll tell you what it will be.
Your definitive Doctor companion for the 60th and beyond.
So grab hold of your brand new sonic screwdriver.
And let's put that honey to the bee.
Sam, how was your lovely sunny weekend in Italy?
Oh my goodness. I was definitely making the most of having a week off of Wholala. I went to a family wedding in Italy for 3 days and it was lovely and gorgeous and sunny, and I don't want to make anyone too jealous.
Already am.
Already have. No, it was amazing food. Lots and lots of pasta, lots of pizza, and it was delectable. How was your weekend?
It looked really, really gorgeous. I'm quite jealous. I was, this is quite funny, I was doing something that is technically a Doctor Who related project, but not really professionally. And I will talk about it more. It's not something I can't talk about.
I think it is professional. It's like whatever you're not going to talk about now, it's going to be televised.
It's going to be televised. I will be on, technically speaking, I will be on television doing something related to Doctor Who on the BBC for the 60th anniversary. But
you're really downplaying this.
I know, I think I'm appropriately levelling this. It's not what you'd expect, but what I will say is I have managed to get my toy Daleks onto television, which is quite important.
I think you were so worried for so long. It's Alasdair's toy Dalek that's on the cover of the Wholala cover art. And I remember at the time when we were shooting it, you were like, what if the BBC find out and they know I'm using their Dalek for imagery and like they're going to come after us? And now
they're going to say like, take that down.
Literally, and now that same Dalek is going to be televised on the BBC.
That same Dalek for this unnamed project was used by the BBC throughout. They they basically took it back off me. Yeah, it was fun. So basically, I spent a lot of my weekend in Wales. Again, that makes it sound like I was on Doctor Who, and I'm not on Doctor Who. As much as I'd love that to be true, that's not what I did this weekend. But yeah, a lot less glamorous than yours. I spent a lot of time on the M4, which all went surprisingly well.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I knew they would go well. I know you're a bit daunted about the driving, but it's fine.
I was driving a car I've not driven before, but it was delicious. It was, I mean, previously, you know, embarrassing confession, I've driven a Fiat 500 for years. And as Donna would have said in a deleted scene, it's like driving a hairdryer. So it's quite a lovely gear shift, if you will, to actually drive
not you
a
making
car with some power.
Oh,
it's disgusting, isn't it?
I know. Well, it was a good segue that you were making into the episode that we're talking about today, because we're diving straight into the 60th anniversary specials, and we wanted to kick it off with a bang. And how better way to celebrate the Doctor and Donna reuniting than looking back on the first time they ever met with a rewatch of The Runaway Bride. Yes,
we've got a real treat for all 5 of you. No, we have a couple more than that.
we had like a lot of people enter our giveaway. We also need to talk about the giveaway.
We did. When there's freebies involved, they love it. No, I'm totally kidding. We love our fans. No, we did do our it's not our first giveaway, is it? We've done a giveaway before. This was our second ever giveaway, I think, of a sonic screwdriver. And we had a lot of fun doing it, but we completely forgot that a really important mechanism when doing a giveaway is to ask people to like and retweet. We did an entry mechanism that requires absolutely no social media traction for us.
We were asking people to DM us, and so it was the most private way of people interacting with the account you can think of.
Completely private entry mechanism.
Yeah.
But we have had to think about kind of like, what are some more fun items we can give away? And I was having a look on eBay, and without spoiling anything just yet, we've got more than a few things that we think you'll actually really, really want that are quite funny. So do keep your eyes peeled. Follow at Wholala Pod on just about every social media network there is, because we're on there now. And we've got some goodies for you coming up.
We really do. If in case you needed any more incentive to be listening to Wholala, you're going to have to keep your ears out, because when we do future giveaways, we will be teasing little answers, maybe little questions in the episodes of the podcast that will help you with the giveaways. So you've got to make sure you're tuned in. The Runaway Bride, we're doing the Runaway Bride, by the way, for anyone who hasn't realised.
We're doing the Runaway Bride, just in case you didn't know.
It's one of those episodes that we talk about sometimes where, like, I've rewatched it so many times I could probably quote it word for word, but watching it this time and actually taking the time to, like, analyze it and, like, focus on it, there was quite a few things in it, especially with Donna's character, that, like, really surprised me or took me back. I think I'm so used to how she is as quote unquote like companion Donna, like traveler of the universe, sort of an explorer, that especially when you see her at the beginning of the episode, she's just like human Donna Noble. It's so jarring and funny at the same time, seeing how different it is. It's just so funny to me.
It's such a great episode. It's pure entertainment. Like, it's whenever we talked about this before, but whenever we do a Catherine Tate episode, and specifically like anything from series 4, we're almost like, oh, that's a bit of a treat to dip into it. Like that's like dipping into a really nice pudding, and it's a bit like, ooh, like, should we be saving that for later?
It's like an arrow mousse.
Oh, it's an arrow mousse, and it's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be going into that yet. And then when you're so right. Like this one, rewatching it and really soaking it up and focusing on the subtitles, the lines in this. I mean, this is pure comedy. I had to make separate notes today just of like script highlights because there were so many of them, and a lot of them were lines that had gone way over my head, like the last 5 watches that we'll get into that are incredibly funny. It's just like relentless funny line.
It's so
funny
good.
Line, serious moment, action,
funny line.
It just comes for you. Club, bus, another club.
I know. I when me and Alison make notes when we're watching the episode, normally my notes like, here's a high, here's low, here's a high. Most of mine, again, like yours, is just lines that I thought were funny, because this episode's so funny, but there's also quite a few like emotionally hefty moments as well, and I feel like the comedy doesn't undermine those moments, and those moments don't undermine the comedy. Like, we'll get into it, but it's just a very, very good episode.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to condense, to be honest with you, because it's just good from the go. Should we recap the episode for anyone who somehow hasn't been there for a while, or even never seen this episode before, which is pretty shocking?
Absolutely shocked. Well,
I'd be disgusted.
I say that I'd be absolutely shocked if no one had seen it, but we're like hedging towards the 20-year anniversary, like, of this episode.
20 years.
You know, we're 18 years away from series 1. This was the Christmas special for series 2. Like, we're really getting there.
Yeah, we're really getting on now. We're so old. But yeah, I mean, even if you haven't, I suggest you go back and enjoy it as a vintage piece of television.
Exactly.
Something that your parents used to watch. That's you.
Oh, God.
And yeah, we think you'll like it. We think you'll love it.
We do. Well, a little context to the episode. So The Runaway Bride came out on the 25th of December, 2006. It's a Christmas special, y'all. We're doing another Christmas special. Directed by Euros Lyn. Now, we've spoken about him on the podcast before. He's directed a multitude of Doctor Who episodes, but most recently, he's known for directing both series 1 and 2 of Heartstopper. I don't know if you are caught up on Heartstopper, Alasdair, but if you're not, get to know.
I'm not super caught up. I watched all of series 1. I've watched the start of series 2. I think it's not really for me. I like it and I really respect it for what it is. I think it's a very special piece of television. It doesn't do a lot for me, I think, because I'm just outside of the bracket it's for. I'm a cynical old gay.
We get it. You hate queer youth. It's fine. You're
I hate queer youth, and I wish ill on them all.
Anyway, the writer is a queer writer, Russell T Davies.
Welcome to Wholala, a queer Doctor Who podcast.
Exactly. Writer Rusty Davies, and the viewing numbers for this episode were 9.35 million. I think it was definitely the top 10. I always think Doctor Who's going to be the top viewed thing on Christmas Day, but it's always the Queen's Speech. It was definitely in the top 10 for the most viewed thing over the Christmas week. And has an IMDb score of 7.5 out of 10, which I think is criminally underrated.
Yeah, that's really weird. Like, what I found watching this as well is putting it on the TV in the living room, it sucks everyone in. Like, people were working at home today, I put it on at lunchtime, and people are like, oh, I'm just kind of like work on my laptop while it's on. And like gradually, like laptops start closing and people start watching. And it's, you know, I've got flatmates who didn't grow up in the UK and didn't grow up with Doctor Who, and it sucks everyone in because it's so entertaining. This one really is like an adventure from the get-go, and it's just packed with such good lines, such good pacing, such kind of constant tension and comedy that you just can't like really look away from it. And every line's iconic. It's great. I didn't really realise, and again, we'll give a quick summary of the episode, but just how fast-paced it is. Like, obviously, they have the whole scene in the beginning in the TARDIS, and I think when they land on Earth,
by that point, we've already had quite a big story with the Doctor and Donna. I think it's like 7 minutes into the episode of like an hour-long spec. Like there is this episode, every time I thought I was like getting towards the end of the episode, in a good way, I mean, I'd look and it would still have like half to go. And I was like, this is a tightly packed episode.
Yeah. I mean, with all of Doctor Who, again, broken record, but massive challenge always for a writer is to set up and resolve everything in just 45 minutes. New characters, new places. It's like an incredible feat. And when we recap these episodes and we go back over them and we do them at speed, they sound ridiculous. And it's like, well, that can't work on screen, and somehow it does.
It really does. Well, as always, my advice is please just, the episodes are on iPlayer, go watch them. They are amazing, especially this one. For anyone who needs a little refresher for The Runaway Bride or maybe hasn't seen it, here's a quick summary of the episode. Picking up immediately after the loss of Rose Tyler, the Doctor is faced with a mysterious bride who, to both of their surprise, has somehow managed to appear in the middle of the TARDIS. Her name's Donna and she does not want to be late for her wedding.
They land on Earth, but the TARDIS can't quite pinpoint the church in Chiswick where she's getting married, so Donna takes matters into her own hands and hails a cab. She doesn't realise, however, that her taxi driver is a robot Santa, and the Doctor quickly learns that the pilot fish from the previous year have returned. Donna realises she's being kidnapped, and after a speedy chase in the TARDIS, the Doctor catches up with Donna and frees her from the taxi. They finally return to the wedding, but the pilot fish soon follow and threaten to harm her and their guests.
After the Doctor apprehends them, he realises that they're working for a higher entity, and it all has something to do with H.C. Clements, the company where Donna and her fiancé Lance work. The three of them head there and find a torturer base underneath the Thames, where they learn that Donna has been somehow filled with Huon particles, a dangerous energy from the dark times of the universe. We meet the Empress of the Rachnos, a giant spider-like alien who's been using Lance to feed Donna the Huon particles to create a key to the centre of the Earth where her babies have laid dormant since the creation of the Earth.
Lance has betrayed Donna, but the Empress soon betrays Lance by feeding him to her children. The Doctor then floods the base with water from the Thames, drowning all of the Empress's children. Donna tells the Doctor to leave before it's too late, and then the military blows up the Empress's ship. Once back on dry land, the Doctor asks Donna to travel with him, but she says no, as she can't live the life he leads. They say their goodbyes, wondering if destiny will cross their paths again.
Ooh, and what do you know? It does. Oh, it does.
It does. It only does. It only does.
Only gone and does it. Yeah, I don't really know what more I can add. I mean, we've got a whole podcast. I have a lot to add, but it's just a bloody great
What more can I
episode.
say? Oh, hang on. Another 45 minutes yet.
Oh my God. No, it's such a good episode. I mean, normally, yeah, we like base this on like highs and lows. We're not even going to do that this week. It's just high. Like it's basically
It's just
all
a solid.
highs.
It's just a solid. We're running off a few biases. One is that we have the nostalgia factor for this one. We also are, I think, big fans of just this dynamic. The 10 Donna dynamic, I think, is probably our favourite ever, with just the way she sasses him and the way that forces his character to be and the way that she really holds her own. We're Catherine Tate fans as well. Mm-hmm. We're fans of her comedy. It all lands really nicely. It's a Russell T Davies story. So much to like. Let's get into it. Immediate high for me, almost just starting chronologically, is the moon shot. So the opening scene, we get the same opening that we do in the first episode, Rose, and we get this panning down with a beautiful marigold score from the moon to the earth, zooming in, closer, 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 landing on a building, pulling in, pulling up, and you are inside the church with Donna. And I just love that shot. I really want it back. I really like that way of introducing a story. It's a shame that they kind of dropped it with Series 5 because I thought it was such a fun way of introducing a new character. And it was funny as well because they usually use it, I guess, for introducing a new companion, but she was only ever really introduced as a one-off character.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if they do it for Martha or not. My instinct is telling me they don't.
I don't think they do it for Martha, do they?
Only times they've done it are for the introduction of Rose and the introduction of Donna. But yeah, it's interesting because they didn't originally plan for Donna to be more than a one-off companion. Obviously, played out well in the end. But yeah, no, I love it. I couldn't tell if it was the beginning of Westminster Bridge playing or just like a swelling orchestra, like da, na, 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 like going into it. But yeah, it brought me straight back to Series 1. I love it. I think it's a really good like hook, line and sinker to get people into the episode. And yeah, straight off the bat, I think that it's really, really good. Obviously, Donna then gets transported to the TARDIS. And one thing that I love is that they reshot the ending for series 2 where the Doctor sees Donna in the TARDIS, because I can't stand those green lights that they sometimes did in series 2 where the whole TARDIS was green. So they refilmed that, obviously, to then have the continuity for the rest of the scene. It's a little thing, but I really like that they did that.
That's very nice. Another high for me then is that neither Donna or the Doctor, neither of these people want to be there. They would not normally be there. That's something that I think is really funny. The way that she reacts to being in the TARDIS, and she's so miserable about being there, and he's so miserable to accidentally have her, and it's just the worst possible timing for him. He's so in his feelings. He's fresh off his kind of love of his lives, has just been kind of trapped in a parallel universe. He's barely had a chance to mourn her and sniff her jacket. We'll get into that. But suddenly this very lippy woman has arrived and is absolutely furious and believes that he's abducted her. I really, this was like, for me, like, I think like the best script moment in it. It's like, you're inside the TARDIS. The what? The TARDIS. The what? The TARDIS? What? It's called the TARDIS. That's not even a proper word. You're just saying things.
It's so funny. The whole interaction with her, and I thought the same thing as you with Roses. It's the shirt that she wore in New Earth, the like pinky purpley one. And it is just, the shirt from, many moons ago. The Doctor randomly has out on the console right after he basically called her. He was definitely giving that a little cheeky sniff. And then she finds him. It's like, how many women have you abducted? I just love how much Donna's shouting in this episode.
I do as well. She's so accusatory. She goes in for violence, and she doesn't stop. She really doesn't stop for about half an hour.
She's going for blood. But this is what I was saying before. Like, we get so used to seeing Donna as, the worldly traveller across the universe, friends with the Doctor. I think she sort of mellows out. She becomes quite wise and authoritative. Whereas this, like, human Donna straight out of Chiswick that we're just meeting, she's just like, later in series 4, Wilf says, he's like, you're not going to sort the world out by shouting at it. And she's like, I can try. Like, her instinct is just loud.
Exactly. This is the Donna who is like just angry at the world and doesn't know how to channel that. And this is kind of like the tragedy in the end is that when Donna loses all her memories, this is what she becomes again. Is just this person who's kind of like raging at the world, and even worse now, kind of like feels that they've lost something, I guess, when we next get her back, but doesn't remember what it was. And so all these things that kind of help grow and change her and find purpose are going to eventually sadly be, lost again. Back to Rose's jacket. That part's really funny. It's just kind of out on the console to kind of prompt the conversation, and for the Doctor to say that he's just very recently lost a friend. What do you mean, lost? And there's no reason for it to be there. So he has just been kind of affectionately touching, holding that, when he was so rudely interrupted by Donna.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I love that within the first interaction that the Doctor and Donna ever get, we already are introduced to the character of Nerys. I just love that Nerys holds that big of a stature in Donna's life, that she's who put you up to this? Was it Nerys? And he's like, who the hell is Nerys? And she's like, your best friend.
Who's Nerys? Your best friend. Oh, this got Nerys written all over it. She finally got me back.
This is the thing about Russell's writing, for what? It's
for what? Exactly. It's immediate curiosity. It's this balance that's so good, right? It's like they're in space. Something impossible has just happened. She's breached the TARDIS. It shouldn't be possible. She evaporated at her own wedding and appeared somewhere else, and it's still Nerys. It's still the thing that bothers her the most. And for a second, they get caught up in that. The next thing I'll say as well, that's another high for me, kind of related to that, is 10 minutes after this, when they are back on Earth, the only thing Donna wants is to get back to the wedding. She doesn't care about anything else. She's willing to compartmentalize and package away this whole experience. She doesn't care. She's like, I just want to get to the church. And she's so frantic and so furious about doing it that the Doctor shares her urgency. And it's only when I rewatched this that I was like, why? Because the Doctor has no stake in this, and he is sprinting. She's like, money, get money. And he's sprinting to the cash point. We've got to get cash. We've got to get cash. We've got to get to the church. We've got to get in a taxi. We've got to get... There's no reason that he should be in this rush other than Donna has convinced him that this is a crisis, and she has completely rattled him. He is flustered. The last of the Time Lords is panicking about getting this woman with no pockets to a wedding.
Oh my God.
I think that's very admirable.
Again, me just writing down like lines that I really liked. When I went to my fitting at Shares Alison, the one thing I forgot to say was "Give me pockets!" Like,
give me pockets.
The whole argument, and it happens all throughout the episode when they get in the cab, and she's like, "You got any money?" He's like, "No, haven't you?" She's like, "Pockets!" Like, it's little things like that in this episode they keep coming back to. I think Nerys is one of them. The pockets is one of them. Lance is one of, like, they just keep. It's so funny and so well written. That whole scene where she calls her mum and she's like, "Oh my god, I don't know where I am. I'm definitely on Earth. And there's a WH Smith's." Like, I feel like you're just really, and I think this is what the Doctor gets caught up in. You're just following like Donna's continual train of thought, and no thoughts, just vibes. Like, that's really where we are with her. It's
so funny. It's so good. The other thing I really like that totally went over my head, like every other time I've seen this until now, and it was almost like watching like a new edit, just because I hadn't remembered it, is when she's trying to hail a taxi and people are kind of shouting at her and they're like, "Stay off the sauce, darling. They think I'm drunk. You're fooling no one, mate. They think I'm in drag."
It's so funny. I know. I can't remember where. I definitely wouldn't have clocked that when I was a kid, but I remember watching that. There's one line I always used to say when I was a kid. Like, did you ever find that when you watch a TV show or movie when you're a kid, and you'd randomly be like walking down the street and you just like regurgitate a line from a show that you like?
I still do that now all the time.
For me, it was always, "Well, duh, maybe not on Mars, but here it's Christmas Eve." I literally would just like be at school. I'd be like, "Well, duh, maybe not on Mars." Like, it's so random.
I love that.
Can I tell you one thing that bugged me? It's not like a low or anything. It just really, really, and it's always bugged me. Like, I remember this, like, watching it when I was a kid.
Yeah, go on.
So we obviously get reintroduced to pilot fish, and I love their redesign. I was never a huge fan of in the Christmas Invasion, that like painted sort of ornamental Santa face. We now get this like chunky, almost cartoony robot face, and I really like that. And Donna gets in the cab. "Thanks for nothing. I'll see you in court." And she gets in the cab, and we sort of zoom in on the pilot fish. It's meant to be our, like, as the audience, because we know the pilot fish is the audience. We're following the Doctor at this point. And that's also an interesting dynamic, that normally the audience are following the companion, whereas in this episode you're very much following the Doctor.
Yes.
But it zooms in on the pilot fish taxi driver, and his eyes are this mesh that's clearly there because the actor playing him needs to be able to see to drive. So they just cut out his eyes and put this grey mesh, and he drives away. They don't even, like on the sides of buses, they have posters on the windows, and when you look close up, it's a mesh that they have the print on the front. They could have just painted or printed on the front eyeballs, and they don't. So it's just grey mesh. And then the next time you see him, it's in the cab, and the car, I'm assuming, is on a rig. So they cut to his face, and then suddenly he's got eyes again. And you're like, right, okay, fine, whatever.
No.
And then in the next shot, within the car, he's suddenly got the mesh back again. And I don't know if you noticed this, but it was driving me crazy.
I didn't notice that at all.
It's mesh eyes, and then it's real eyes, and then eventually she obviously pulls off the mask, and you see the pilot fish. And I'm just like, ooh, like, it's a little thing of continuity, but it really like ground my gears. It's so
that is annoying. Yeah. However, the whole of kind of Santa's a robot, and just the whole idea of like evil Santa with like a trombone as a gun at Christmas time. It's just a great callback, but in itself, it's just such a funny Christmas time villain to have.
We haven't even said it's really a Christmas episode.
No, and like the thing is, like in the Christmas Invasion, the last year, like it's actually really menacing. Like these three kind of like stony faced Santas with masks on, with kind of trombones that turn into guns, is actually really scary. And in this one, it's, you understand the threat, but there's something a little bit more funny about it because of Donna's reaction to Santa's a robot. Which I just love.
I love the bit going off that in the taxi where they scored it, and Murray really scored it to have the music matching like the dialogue. And she goes, "I'm late for the wedding. Ding, ding, my own wedding. Ding, ding." And the music is like timing her. And then she's like, "Are you deaf or what?" And then pulls back the mask. And then immediately is like, and backing on the window, panning. She's like, help me, I'm being driven by a robot." Like, to the people in the car. It's so funny.
This taxi chase, this whole scene is like world-class Doctor Who. It's some of the best it's ever been. I love it.
So good.
I actually had, this is my like litmus test for really any piece of media for me, is like, do I get chills? Do I get chills? That's my like, am I connecting with this emotionally?
And did you?
And like this one, I got chills down my back. I was watching it all these years later, over my lunchtime with a bagel, and I was like, chills down my back. And I just loved it. I as well, I'll say, every time I see a taxi on the motorway now, I saw one the other day, immediately think of this. It's just rooted in my head. That image of like the TARDIS flying low, bouncing off someone's bonnet and like following a taxi down the motorway. Such genius kind of idea that someone had, just like a way of like doing a chase that's just so like silly and could only really work in Doctor Who, just like the mundane of a motorway and like the fantastical of like the TARDIS kind of bouncing off people's roofs.
Yeah.
Because the TARDIS isn't really like meant to just fly, and so it's struggling with that, and you never get to see it kind of fly slowly like that. It was just a very interesting way of showing it.
It's the way as well he like wraps, he can't pilot the TARDIS and be at the door trying to summon Donna in, so he like has to like wrap a piece of yarn around the console so he can like have a little pulley system. And yeah, no, I love the line he says afterwards where he's like, for a spaceship, she doesn't really do that much flying. And it's just so like, and you really, this is another one of those moments in the episode where you get like a real weight of emotion, and I've called it like the soft dialogue. I don't know if that's like the industry term for it, where this is comedy, and then he's trying to convince Donna to trust him. I'm a complete stranger. You think I've kidnapped you, but I'm telling you, you're in danger if you stay where you are. Jump into the TARDIS. He says, trust me. And she says, is that what you said to her, your friend, the one you lost? Did she trust you? And he goes, yes, she did. And she is not dead. She is so alive. Now jump. That's the bit where I get chills. And you see her calculating what she's going to do, figuring out, and she does trust him. And from that moment on, she doesn't see the Doctor as a threat anymore. She sees him as at least someone she can trust. She doesn't know him. And later when Sylvia asks him to her, like, who is that man? And she doesn't know. You can tell she doesn't even know, but she does trust him and she will follow him.
Yeah. I had exactly the same notes as you, my love. Exactly the same ones. that balance of comedy and poignancy is what I said. I said I
that's better than soft dialogue.
academic doing these readings of a Doctor Who episode, but I think that's what it was. And the "she is so alive" line was really, really fantastic. What I liked as well about this as well is you have like two little kids in the back of the car, just like one car down on the motorway, and they're watching the whole chase happening, and presumably their parents just like can't see this thing going on, and they're like shouting out the back window, just like jump, but you can't hear them, you can just see them mouthing it. And it was cool as well because like those kids were the same age we were watching it, and it was almost like it was like us watching. It was like our little like fourth wall moment. It's not the fourth wall, that's not
no, I get what you mean though. Yeah,
it was our like, oh, that's us in the episode, I think, like willing her to
like
jump as well.
They're cheering them on,
and they cheer when she does it. And it was really nice. It was really fun. I really liked that. It's just, I mean, like I say, the balance of comedy and that moment, you know, not letting Rose be forgotten too soon. Yeah. But just, you know, the door swinging open and Santa's a robot. And then not within like 1 minute later, like that genuinely very beautiful, like, you know, emotional connection they have for the first time. And like making a very literal leap of faith was very nice. And I think that was another thing I really liked as well, is that, you know, it's mindful of the continuity that he just lost Rose, and that's kind of like an earth-shattering thing, and he doesn't move on from that. So even though he's putting on his kind of like peppy Doctor face, he's like it's stuck with him very deeply, and he finds it very difficult to talk about, and he's very resistant until a lot later in the episode to really say anything about her or even name her until the very, very end. And I like that it carried across, because I think we've said in more recent times, we found it frustrating that the Doctor will lose a companion in the most like harrowing, terrible way, and the next time we see the Doctor, there's no reference, like none, and he's and they've moved on. So I don't always love that.
No, me neither. I actually, so I wrote a lot of notes this episode, and a lot of them are just like, I like this line, I think this is funny. But one thing I really wanted to talk with you about is the Doctor's character in this episode post losing Rose. And I really liked your observation that we as the audience aren't like forgetting her too soon. There's a lot of callbacks to her. I really like the little montage they do when they're back at the reception, and everywhere the Doctor looks, it's something that reminds him of Rose. But it's interesting what you were saying about the Doctor following Donna, because the way that I read it when watching this episode, which I don't think I've ever really thought about before, is that up until a certain point in the episode, he isn't he doesn't want to have another companion, I don't think. He doesn't think he needs one. He's lost Rose. No one will ever be able to replace Rose. And he doesn't see Donna as a person as much as he sees her as like an object of interest, like a curiosity. He's confused why she's there, and she's like a problem that he has to solve. He doesn't actually really care about any of the individual parties involved. Like when the pilot fish come and they destroy the reception, he doesn't care about all the people. She's like, you're a doctor, you can help people. And he's too busy looking at the rubble, and he's like, oh, they're fine. We need to sort this out. And he's like following all the steps of the mystery. And Donna is almost at times like an inconvenience to him when he's sat on the rooftop sonicking her. He's not there to like comfort her really. Yeah. He's there just using her.
You're not clever, you're not important, you're not connected.
Exactly. And it's even when later in the episode, and I'm jumping ahead a bit, he works out that there's human particles in her. He's excited and jumping up about because he's worked out the mystery, he's figured it out.
Yeah.
And she needs to slap him again and say, if your people banned human particles, why do they do that? And he sort of stops himself and says, because they're deadly. And she's like, does that mean they're deadly to me? And it's only really that point that I think he starts to really care for Donna. And then when he sees how she's been betrayed by Lance, that's when he really starts to care for her as Donna Noble and not just as the problem he's solving.
Yes, I totally agree. I noticed that as well with the little like ball bombs flying out of the Christmas tree. The Doctor kind of observes it with curiosity, right? He sees it coming, but he doesn't leap into action to save people. He kind of lets it play out a little bit to see like, oh, where's this going to go? And even in then stopping the pilot fish when they get into the room, he's got like that like doctory smug swagger where he's like, don't let him near the sound system on the mic, and does a whole little like bit, and I'm like, oh my god, like, Granddad's dead and he's kind of like doing one-liners. I was like, come on.
No, Granddad's not dead. He was held up in bed with Spanish flu.
Right. And but it makes sense in that context, I guess, but he's so focused on kind of like, you know, me versus Alien of the Week that he would be, I think, neglectful to think about like the human cost. Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? And I mean, the character of the Doctor is interesting as well. Drink every time I say it's interesting. That at the end of the episode, when he is flooding the lab and killing all the little Arachnos babies, and we're meant to feel kind of uncertain about this because it's quite undoctory a resolution to like conclude it with murder. And / genocide. I don't know if the Arachnos Empress.
Yeah, no, she's as far as he was aware, she was potentially the last of the Arachnos, and also all the babies, like you said, it's not their fault they're there. They've just been there since they were born.
Yeah, he gets named like murderer and sits quite comfortably with that, and it's very like, ooh, is this like a happy ending? No, but we find that with the tie-in to Turn Left, where we see the alternate version of events where Donna wasn't there, that he would have died because he would never have stopped. And it kind of suggests that at that point, he was so traumatized, depressed by losing Rose that he was essentially suicidal and willing to die in the process, which is quite scary to think that's kind of where it would have gone without just a nudge from Donna, like, you've done enough, stop.
Yeah.
It's good. And it's funny, like, you know, that's where he is, despite kind of all the prancing around and the liveliness. Actually, like, on quite a deep level, he's really, really messed up by the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I've got a few more notes as well for the wedding reception, but you've made a really great point there. And one of the other points that I really wanted to touch on in this episode is sort of Donna's, how she sees herself and her self-worth. And as her character plays out in series 4, she always says, she's like, I'm nothing special. Like, I'm just a temp. I'm not this, I'm not that. And you see her in this episode that she, I think, feels useless and like she's kind of just there while things are happening. And even in this episode, she, like you said, she does the most important thing by, all she does is, she's not changing the world by the action she's doing. All she's saying is, Doctor, you can stop now. Like, you've done enough. Let's go. And that is enough to save the Doctor's life and to then save so many countless other people's lives later down the line. And this is a really interesting, I think, kick off for this character, especially right at the end when the Doctor's saying to her, you know, travel with me, you can come with me. And she's like, basically she's saying, I couldn't live the life you lead. Like, if every day is like this, I can't do that. Yeah. And then when she gets a bit of time to sort of sit and reflect, she thinks, actually, no, I can. And that's why when we then see her in Partners in Crime, which we've already touched on, she's like, oh, I've been looking for you, like I made a mistake. I should have said yes, I can do this and I want to. And then she kind of like prepares herself. She always makes sure the car boot is packed. She always is keeping an eye out for the Doctor and weird stories. And even when she does find him and she is traveling the world, she still is constantly doubting herself and saying she's not good enough. And there's that really lovely scene with Rose in Turn Left where Rose calls her the most important woman in the whole of creation. And she just kind of laughs and says, don't do that. I don't believe you. And
that might work on the men, Blondie, but it won't work on me.
Exactly.
Something to that effect. Very loose quote, but something like that.
It's no, exactly. And it's not until she loses all her memories that the Doctor tells her that there are so many people in the universe who think she's the most important woman, and Sylvia says she still is to me. And he's like, well, maybe you should tell her that.
Ooh. Because Sylvia is really not pleasant to Donna in this at all. She does have a very funny line here, but I mean, she vanishes in front of everyone and kind of zaps through the ceiling, and Sylvia basically accuses her of showing off, and says, "Oh, I got your message. You're very funny." And they host a whole wedding reception without knowing if Donna's safe and where she is. They just go ahead and do it. So the people in Donna's life don't really have her back, apart from, we later find out, her dad does and her granddad Wilf does. But apart from that, she's got a lot of people around her. Nerys is at the wedding. Nerys hates her. And she clearly settles for friendships that, aren't, very caring, and it's just kind of a, thing of convenience. I guess that's kind of what Nerys shows on some level, but
I think a lot of her self-worth probably does come from I can't lie, I love Sylvia Noble. I think she's really funny. I also wrote here that I really love her as a mother character, but she also specifically in this episode as a mother, like a mother-in-law, like a mother of the bride. I think she does that so well.
She does the mother of the bride bit very well here.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of discourse on Twitter where they're saying she's an abusive mother, and I can't necessarily say that I disagree, despite that I still really like her as a character, because, in this episode, when we see her in the next episode with Donna, she's just shooting Donna down and saying, oh, you're just a temp, no one's unemployed these days, you're not doing anything with your life, blah, 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 blah. Here, she doesn't believe Donna when she's been through all this trauma. I think that Donna doesn't, or at least in this episode, we're not made to see that she doesn't really have a lot of people giving her positive affirmations. I think that might have a lot to do with why she thinks of herself the way she does.
Yeah, I think that's obviously true.
Yeah.
There's also just a very funny line here, and I really like the way that this leads into one of several things we find out about Donna's world, which is first day at school, she was sent home for biting. And I didn't pick up on that ever before, and I'd like to imagine the idea of a young Donna Noble biting people.
I know.
But I think that's part of, again, if I may segue, into one of the things that we really like about the writing in this era, as well as we get these very full pictures of people's life outside of life with the Doctor. We know about their families, we know about their jobs. We just have a very clear picture of who they are. And there's, other seasons where even with Amy and Rory, I think we saw their parents in one scene ever. And I don't know that they actually ever speak. I think the mum has one line.
They speak a bit. They're in the house in the finale of Series 5. They're in the house and then they're at the wedding, and the dad's kind of like, oh, I'm just working on my speech. I need a minute more and then I'll be ready with you. And the mum kind of flaps a bit, but it's nothing of any substance.
Yeah. And same with even Clara's family. I think we see her nan in one episode, and it's shown that the nan is actually quite an important character. Okay, two episodes.
for the audience listening, I'm holding up two fingers.
He's holding up two fingers. And I think they recast the dad.
Yeah, they did. It was like a young flashback. Yeah, they did a young flashback and then they recast him. But when they do the young flashback to when her mum died, it's still Jenna Coleman playing Clara. So he wouldn't have aged that much, No,
not in a way they couldn't have just given this guy grey hair or something. But yeah. On this, some of the things we learn about Donna I found really funny. All of her backstory is really funny. Sent home for biting, the family dynamics, even things she says about, well, nobody makes coffee for secretaries, just getting into the nuances of her day-to-day working life, even 2 years at a double glazing firm, and then the idea that working at H.C. Clements is quite posh. There's an allusion here I missed the first time to Donna having a dog. So when she's begging Lance to marry her, she's like, I'd get rid of that dog. And I guess because they never expected her to come back, they didn't need to worry about that. And it was just a line chucked in. But I really like that. For me, my new kind of headcanon here is that Donna did get rid of a dog so that she could have Lance. And there was a time when Donna had some like horrible, bratty, snarly little chihuahua or something who she just like banished to the kennel so that she could have Lance.
It's so funny. I can definitely see that happening. I forgot that line was in there. Is the bit where she's running up the staircase. Please, 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 please.
Please.
It's so funny. You really do get like a fully full... I think this is the thing I really want to see going into the new era, because I think that in a lot of later companions, you have really grown to like them, and you like them when you watch them on screen. Whereas in this one episode, you know everything you need to know about Donna. You know enough about her backstory. You know enough about who she is as a character, and then you really grow to like her. And I think that's what I really want to see going forward. I want to see that, and I know that you might not agree, but I want to see more songs with words. I can't listen to Love Don't Roam by Neil Hannon enough. It's so good in this episode. I
was going to say, the music is great. I feel like the broadcast version is maybe different to the soundtrack version, because listening to the broadcast one, it had a lot of...
I think it might be, yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is kind of going off. And normally on the soundtrack version, I sort of, as you know, I skip over the ones with words often. But yeah, like, massive high for me in this episode. The music creates such a constant energy running all the way through this. Like we said, a criticism of season 2, I think this is technically part of season 2, is that generally the music not generally. The music could sometimes overwhelm the dialogue. In this one, I think it really compensates so nicely, just like you said in the taxi. The music actually like working alongside Donna's dialogue to actually make to elevate the comedy is so good. And something else that we haven't talked about yet is Donna's theme. I think this is the first. I think we only hear it for the first time. I realized very late in the episode. We don't hear it with Donna's introduction. I think we only hear it
in
around the chase
scene.
On the segways.
Yeah.
Which is nice, because it's almost as if that's the moment that she's become a companion with the Doctor, and it's almost like they've got an in-joke and they're laughing together and Lance isn't in on it, and suddenly her and the Doctor, they're the travellers now. And Lance is kind of the idiot on the side who wants to be on it, but he's not. Yeah. And I really like that. And Donna's theme, we've said before, like, it so quickly says everything about who she is. It's such a descriptive theme of Donna's character.
No, I completely agree. I actually made a note that I hadn't thought about it how you had, and I really agree with you, because I think my note said, I love the Segway scene. It's so silly and fun, but not at all important to the plot. I'm so glad they kept it in, because it's literally just a shot of the Doctor, Lance and Donna going on Segways and laughing. But you're so right that I think that is the moment, again, when you hear Donna's theme for the first time, that the Doctor and Donna are really like adventurers together. Like they're really in on it together. And then, like you said, anyone else who's there is just kind of also in the room. I really like that insight.
I think so, because up until then, Donna's been like, take me home, get me to the church, and trying to just get away from this man who's apprehended her. And at this point, I guess the turning point is actually the lifts, where he's like, well, if there's only a basement, how come there's a sign here on the lift that says lower basement? And she says, oh, it needs a key. That's all right, you guys can go. I've got this handled. And she's like, oh, no, you don't. I'm coming with you. And I think from that point, you know, now it's her choice to be with the Doctor.
Yeah.
And she's enjoying it. And I think it's like the first time she's seeing it how he sees it. She's now in on the fun of it and exploring. And she's, you know, getting a little bit of the thrill of being in the lab. Speaking of the lab as well that they enter, another great theme we get here. We get a little doot, 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 doot. We get the kind of Torchwood. Oh,
yeah, I thought that. The Torchwood. I know.
I assume we heard it before this in...
It was in Army of Ghosts
season 2 finale. Yeah. Yeah, before they adapted it fully for the spin-off. But I really, really like the Torchwood motif, the little doot. And I hope if we do get the heavily rumoured unit spin-off, I've heard some people saying like it's coming this month, the announcement about that sort of thing. I really hope it integrates some aspects of like the legacy of Torchwood, and if they found a way to create like a theme for that, which it just had like a little hint of a doot in it, I would be over the moon, because I love that. So good. I love that bit.
Did you know in the actual Torchwood theme, where they really fully flesh out the dun 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 dun, at the end when it goes Torchwood, 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 That's actually David Tennant saying Torchwood.
Is it?
It's the Doctor say. I think they took a soundbite from when either this episode or in the finale of season 2, the 10th Doctor said Torchwood or whispered it, and they edit that into it. And so at the end of it goes dun, 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 Torchwood, 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 and it's David Tennant saying it, which I think is really fun.
That is fun. It's quite spooky the way it's edited. It sounds really creepy. I guess they really play with the pitch and stuff for that. But
I know that we're getting late into the episode and I can't believe we haven't touched on this. Can I please bring the conversation around to the Empress of the Rachnos?
Babe, you can, because it was my next note.
Oh, well, my note, pardon my French, says the Empress of the motherfucking Rachnos.
Well,
I love her as a villain. I love how we don't even get alluded to her until way into halfway through this episode. And then when we do, we start seeing, over the shoulder shots and close-ups of her hands, and you hear, she's got a real, villain voice. She's talking through her teeth.
Big, lispy, campy voice.
Exactly. And you kind of see her from underneath, and you can see the legs, and you see all the webs around her, and you're starting to, get alluded that she's a spider. But actually seeing her there, I love the line as well that the Doctor says when he's talking to her over the intercom, and he goes, only a mad one would speak to thin air, and believe me, you don't want to make me mad. Then she teleports down. I think this has to be one of, if not the best practical effects for a monster Doctor Who has ever done. It's just the sheer scale of it, and the fact that even though she's always stationary, she doesn't walk around, she is always moving, and her body is swaying and going up and down.
It's fantastic.
And it's the makeup, the prosthetics, the rigging of her body, it's just so good. I read somewhere that it only took they filmed all of her scenes in 3 days, which is crazy to me, just by how much she's in the latter half of the episode and how good her performance is. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's one of those how do they do that moments as well, because she's on this massive prosthetic body, and I don't think about her as an actress with legs. I think about her as part of this huge costume, even the sharp teeth, the many eyes, and the way they film her as well. Every time she gets angry and she lashes around, the camera gets more chaotic with it. It's all very, very well done. And it's funny because some bits of the CGI around it, or the compositing, or whatever you want to say. I'm not going to get super technical about it, but
I will.
Because I know you will, and you can tell they really stand out. They've not aged super well. Even the scene where the baubles start moving, it's almost like the whole shot has slightly degraded in quality or something. There's something a bit off. And
there's a lot of dodgy green screen where they're looking behind, when they're looking down the hole, and you can see the Doctor's Donna kind of green. You
can tell that they are in front of a green screen, and the hole has been placed, and then behind that is practical again. It's very obvious where things are not real. But, again, this is all in credit of great practical effects. She's aged incredibly well, and it looks great.
It's great.
Yeah.
I know it's a very me thing, and also people who have been listening to podcasts have called me up on it. They say I talk about action figures and stuff too much. And dear listener, I'm going to keep doing it. Have you ever seen the action figure for the Empress of the Rachnos?
No, I have not.
So Doctor
Who...
Shall I
Google this?
No, yeah, Google it. I was going to show you a picture, but you Google it. So Doctor Who have a 5-inch figure scale, and they used to make these things called deluxe figures, and they made a Reaper, and they made the Empress of the Rachnos, made several deluxe ones, which were really big, and they had a full-scale Empress of the Rachnos figure with completely movable legs, movable arm pincers. It was the pride and joy of every Doctor Who collector's collection. And I think it was only £29 or something like that. It was very affordable. It's taken everything within me not to purchase one as an adult, because it is a beautiful piece of toy art. I really have a respect for toy art specifically, and it is just an amazing piece.
Wow, I'm just looking at it on eBay right now. I can't quite work out how big it is from the pictures.
It was about this big. Look at me, it was about this big.
Wow, it's
huge.
Really creepy. It's not something I'd want my kids to have in the house.
I have a really funny story.
Very icky.
So my mum had quite a major surgery when I was a kid, around the time this came out, and as to kind of she was in the hospital for a few weeks, and to kind of, I think, pluck up our spirits, I think her and Dad were you can each choose something you want, buy something you want, and little old me was I want the Empress of the Rachnos. So as like to kind of like pick up her spirits, they let me borrow. And I remember visiting my mum in the hospital and going to show her this brand new toy that I'd bought, which is this huge, ugly, horrific red spider. And my dad being like, put that away. You're like on a hospital ward of people recovering from major surgeries and you're going to terrify them all with this huge spider.
Yes. Oh my God. We were like, Mum, look.
I know. I was like, isn't it
got.
Cool? And she was like, get that away from me.
Get that away from me right now. I'm looking at it. You can get it in like new sealed condition, £80 right now on eBay. How are you feeling about that?
I mean, I've seen ones on eBay. I've done looking too. And you can get someone, I remember the paint used to chip on it quite a lot, but you can get unsealed ones for like 30 quid, I want to say.
Oh, come on. The box, I've just realised like, the detail on this, the like vacuum seal on the plastic is spiderweb design as well.
They used to go so hard, and I know I'm a broken record, but I keep saying I want not only like accessible toys for kids, because this was aimed at kids and has now been like adopted by collectors, but also the packaging, like everything about, the Dalek that we did our unboxing video for, the inside the box was meant to look like Van Statten's museum. We have, so there's a little teaser for everyone listening, we are planning to do a lot more video content coming out, and I may or may not have purchased something that was also available around this era that we're going to be doing an unboxing for, and I've had a look at the packaging for that, and it's bloody glorious.
You've kept a lot of it secret from me. I don't even know what some of this is. I've just been told that I need to come over pretty soon to see some surprises we've got from eBay.
Mm-hmm. I'm very excited for it, but yeah. Anyway, Empress of the Rachnos
Great character.
is amazing. The only thing I would have wished to have seen, and I'm really glad they didn't do this, because they would, like you said, they wouldn't be able to do this at the time, is in a world like if you were going to make this today, I think you could CGI her well enough that you could do a few walking shots and see her maybe like crawl up the walls and along the ceiling, and like see her, because she kind of like, especially when he drowns the babies, she just kind of stands still and like shouts and it's like, my children. And I'm really glad they didn't try to CGI, because I think we would have had a Sabine situation where it's just so jarring. But if it was made today, or I would love to see, because she's the Empress of the Rachnos, I would love to see a story with other Rachnos. I'd like to see them like crawling up the walls and hanging upside down and seeing if they maybe produce webs. Like I think it could be. I think it could like take arachnids of the UK and like really like do something more with it.
You could do something really horrible. I bet if you saw the way she moved, it'd be horrifying. Like horrible little spindly legs moving like really quickly. Ugh. Yeah, it'd be great. That would really elevate, I think, the horror of it, because a lot of that scene would really be elevated, I think, by a bit more movement, because a lot of it is just back, forth, angle of Doctor and Donna, angle of the Rachnos, back on DoctorDonna. And it'd probably be a lot more interesting and menacing if the Rachnos didn't just stay on a ledge and actually came near them, and you could see how much bigger it was than them, and it was kind of intimidating them a little bit. It almost feels like she's constrained to that corner when she isn't. And it's also just funny, like for like a ancient monster, it keeps that Doctor Who campiness when her children are being drowned. My children.
There's an emotional roller coaster in that. So like when Donna realizes that Lance has betrayed her, it is actually like heart-wrenching seeing her, because she's not quite like, not to be rude to Donna, she's not quite clever enough to work it out on her own, and she needs the Doctor to kind of talk her through it, and the Doctor realizes obviously a lot quicker than she does, and he has to kind of like spell it out for her. And then they quickly go to the center of the earth, which again, like they go to the beginning of the creation of the earth. I think that scene was unnecessary. If I had to have a low for this episode, I think they needed like a spectacle, because like you said, there is a lot of just back and forth between the DoctorDonna and the Rachnos, and they needed like a big spectacle scene, but it really like slows down the pace for me. But you get this great acting by Catherine where she's like silently crying, and that they've said it before in Doctor 2 that like when you hear like a child quietly cry, that something's really wrong. And you see the Doctor like chippering away in the TARDIS, and she's just silently crying to herself. And then all of a sudden they're force feeding Lance the human particles, then they're back, and then they're making jokes in the webs, and then
they're waterboarding Lance.
They really are waterboarding Lance. I had another note that was like, why play the long game with Donna when they could have just
chugged it down Lance? I know. Yeah, great point. You know what made me think of just then with the crying in the TARDIS? Did you see that thing that was going around? It was that scene from The Flux, and there's this character called Carvanista. I'm sorry.
Yes. I know exactly.
And he's like in the TARDIS, like sulking because his whole species just got wiped out. And Yaz goes, "Is he okay?" And of all people, Dan goes, "He's just lost all of his people." And he's kind of just sat and like just head in hands, like, oh dear. And the Doctor just completely ignores and is like, right, we're in position.
I'm like, you're the last of the Time Lords and you have nothing to add to like
nothing to
help
add.
This guy.
Last of the Time Lords, like the one like genocide understander in the room was like, not my issue, I'm not dealing with this. That's my thing, and you're kind of taking my thunder. Could you not? Very funny.
Well, talking about the last of the Time Lords, it's really interesting in this episode seeing, like, I love seeing the collateral damage that the Time Lords and the Time War have on other species, because as soon as the Rachnos realizes that the Doctor's the Time Lord from Gallifrey, she's like, you've murdered the Rachnos. And I'm assuming it's a reference to the Time War, but, like, honestly, knowing the Time Lords, it might not have been. They might have just murdered the Rachnos. I don't know.
Yeah, it was always implied to me that it wasn't a Rachnos thing, that it was almost like a pest control thing, that they have like some like instinctive dislike of them, like it was kind of like like that's a species that the Time Lord deemed a bit icky and they went after, because I think we always have illusions that the Time Lords were like complex and unpleasant people, and in the end went power mad, but even up until that point had like a lot of secrets and complexities. I really like when we get like dropped little hints about things the Time Lords did, like when people got rid of Huon particles. Like, it's kind of like a ridiculous thing to be able to do, like remove a type of particle from the universe, but makes complete sense that Time Lords could do it. I quite like when we got little like nibbles of Time Lord history kind of peppered around, like, oh, my people worked that out, or oh, that's Time Lord science, they used to know how to do blank, or the Reapers, like, oh, my people would have stopped this, like just things that would have been like snap of the fingers easy for like a Time Lord to do, that's not possible anymore. Like, I always quite enjoy that.
Me too. I mean, they dive into it more obviously in like Jodie's era, which is a real highlight of Jodie's era. I think a lot of people look over, but that how power hungry the Time Lords kind of became, and like they kind of, the Master I think comments on it, he's like, what kind of species calls themselves Time Lords, and that I think says everything you sort of need to know.
The other thing that kind of occurred to me with the Huon particles was that we're led to believe that having Huon particles in your body, especially kind of over the kind of period that Donna was drinking them in her coffee, is really dangerous, and they're super toxic, and it's kind of just like deemed resolved when
they get like sucked out.
The Rachnos, when the Rachnos uses them as the key, and they just kind of suck all the particles out of her, and it's kind of just fixed. But I wonder if this kind of ancient, mysterious particle being inside Donna's biology for so long could be some kind of explanation for how she could survive a Time Lord human metacrisis.
Ooh.
A kind of particle that was kind of thought to be extinct in the universe that the Time Lords thought was so dangerous they removed it. I wondered if, could that kind of exposure do something to Donna's biology?
Can I clown for a minute? Do I have
clown?
Permission? So, you know, when Donna comes back after she's had her memories removed in the end of time, and she's starting to remember things about the Doctor, and we have that cliffhanger where she's, you know, why can I see a giant wasp? And she's starting to remember it all. And we've always been told that if Donna remembers the Doctor, that she'll die. And then there's kind of a throwaway line where the Doctor's like to the Master, oh, you didn't think I'd leave my best friend without any defences. But what you actually physically see when she's freaking out is this golden, bright yellow, white kind of explosion out of her head that looks very, very similar to the Huon particles when they're making her glow and do this. So I'm wondering if the Doctor had used the residual Huon energy in her body to somehow protect her from her mind collapsing when she remembers everything. And then maybe, like you said, they could then use that somewhere, because it's clear, at least to me, we don't obviously know that Donna will remember the Doctor. Like, from what we've seen in the teaser and what we kind of know, she's going to be in it for episodes. We know she ends up in the TARDIS. The Doctor will eventually remember the Doctor. So it would be interesting to see if they maybe use human energy to kind of describe that.
I will say, just about every kind of mystical light in Doctor Who is golden. Like, regeneration energy is a golden glow.
That is also
true. The TARDIS, when it takes human form, has a golden glow.
Listen,
the
I
light
preface this with
inside.
that I'm clowning.
No, you did. You did. But it'd be a wonderful explanation on some level, wouldn't it? It kind of makes sense. We don't really know anything about Huon particles.
It would be nice to bring it right back round to the beginning. Like, I hope they reference this adventure. I mean, we already know that Russell said that Nerys is getting a good old reference. Oh, well, talking about Donna and coming back and stuff, I really like the the unintentional foreshadowing of when the Doctor's saying goodbye to her and she says, am I ever going to see you again? And he's like, if I'm lucky. And I think that was, it's one of those like real poetic things that Russell couldn't have planned, because obviously he wasn't intending for Catherine to come back for a main series, but that's dropped in there that he doesn't normally do with one-off companions, doesn't do it with Adelaide, doesn't do it with Lady Christina de Souza, who's had a whole other life on Big Finish, doesn't do it with Miss Kylie Minogue. It's just with Donna, and I think that was like a deliciously unintentional thing.
It was. I really, really liked that as well. It lined up very nicely, this idea of like destiny binding them together. And I like that for the 60th still, from what we see in the trailers, it's like it still isn't done. You know, all the way towards the end of the series 4 finale, which is kind of the conclusion of Donna's story. It's like, it's still not done, it's still not done, it's still going, something's still drawing us together, the story's not finished yet. And you're kind of led to believe that it's over when Donna has her memories wiped. And I think that's like the death, isn't it, that one of these insane Daleks predicts is kind of like
Dalek Carney says
that
one of your companions will die, and what they mean is the version of Donna that travelled with the Doctor in the TARDIS is dead, and the version of Donna that remains is the one who never knew him.
Yes. So it's nice that there's still something cosmic binding them together one more time.
Mm-hmm. I love it. This whole episode, it feels like both an event for Doctor Who, but also, without it even realising at the time, such a precursor to so many things that would happen down the line. And it just makes me all the more excited to see, like you said, their story's not complete. The story's not done. Destiny is heading for Donna Noble, and I can't wait to see what the next chapter of the story is.
I know. It's really impossible to think how this is going to be resolved. I'm sure it'll be quite tidy the way that it is done, and they've had plenty of time to think about it. And, you know, in all honesty, I think everyone accepts Donna coming back, and any solution they give will be welcome. Very, very excited to see how they bring her back one more time.
Alasdair, are you ready for season 3 of Wholala's first ever Camp or Damp?
Woohoo! Yeah! Woo, baby!
Yeah, let's go, baby! Let's get the Bosco Frog Note. Okay, Camp or Damp. Yeah. Thanks for nothing, spaceman. I'll see you in coal. Camp or Damp.
Camp, and especially the pronunciation of coal. Thanks for nothing, spaceman. I'll see you in coal.
I'll see you in coal. Yeah, no, me too. I love it. They think I'm in fancy dress. They think I'm drunk. They think I'm in drag. Camp or Damp?
Camp, and I really like the respectful way that it wasn't, they think I'm a man. I like the way it was like, they think I'm in drag. I was like, that elevated it for me somehow.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. They think I'm in drag.
It could have really gone south to like a really awful mid-noughties transphobia joke.
It really could have. And it didn't. And I'm so glad it didn't, because that really elevated it. It's the triple whammy as well. Fancy dress, drunk, drag, not able to get a taxi. Really funny.
Really good. And number 3, having the reception without the bride. To quote, "You had the reception without me." Camp or Damp?
They had the reception without me.
I noticed.
I gathered. Yes, yeah, I gather. Camp, incredibly good. It's just another one of those moments, like kind of like literally like record scratch. You had the reception. You know, Nerys is in frame. All incredibly funny.
Well, it's all paid for. Why not?
Definitely on planet Earth.
Oh, it's so camp to me.
Everyone's good. Everyone's so good.
Would you like a couple of fun facts to round off this episode?
Oh, I'd love some. Go on.
Gorgeous.
See if there's any I don't know.
Well, do you know what? There was some that I didn't know, so I think there'll be some to surprise you. This is actually the first episode in New Who where Gallifrey gets mentioned by name.
Oh, I find that very hard to believe that we have gone this far, like talking about like the last of the Time Lords.
I know.
My people are gone.
At least on screen, never told Rose what planet. He would say like, "My planet's gone," or "My people would have stopped this. I'm the last of the Time Lords." But we never got. This is the first time where the Doctor says the word Gallifrey on New Who.
A very slow reveal.
Very slow reveal.
The name.
There you go.
God.
Catherine Tate was unable to attend the traditional first cast read through the episode, so David Tennant's then girlfriend, Sophia Miles, read the part of Donna Noble.
Then girlfriend, Sophia Miles, is very jarring and upsetting. Yeah, interesting. Can you imagine how like miserable that would have been if it was Donna Noble as played by Sophia Miles?
Oh, God.
It'd been so off. I did at one point in time have quite a crush on Sophia Miles when she played Lady Penelope in the Thunderbirds movie. That's now on the permanent record, so I'll be ending the podcast here and not coming back to it. So sorry.
No, you have to stay. You have to stay because I've got a couple more fun facts for you.
Okay.
So originally, the idea of putting the TARDIS in a car chase was a Russell T Davies idea that he'd wanted to do apparently since childhood, and he originally suggested it for school reunion with the Doctor rescuing Sarah Jane Smith from a car chase.
Okay.
But it was then later decided that it took too much time away from Sarah's development in that episode, so they decided to scrap it.
Yeah, and probably like physically too far from the school. I wonder where they would have been taking her.
I don't know, maybe chasing a Krillitane, who knows?
I'm really glad they pushed that idea. I think sometimes, I think actually a lot of Doctor Who fans, if they really thought about it, could pin down one scene at least that they've always wanted to see, something they wish they'd explored, one image in your head. What's yours? Go on.
Well, mine is my next fun fact. You could not have linked this better for me. So, as you know, there's a lot of amazing deleted scenes from this era, and in this episode as well, the one where they're in the KA, and Donna says it's like driving in a hairdryer. It's so good.
I think it's a smart car.
Sorry, a smart car. Yes, it's a smart car. But there's one deleted scene that they did film, and I have never seen. I don't know if this footage exists on the internet, and I would, if anyone listening knows if this exists, please send it my way. So Bella Emberg, whose name I don't think you'll recognise, she filmed a cameo in this episode where the Doctor and Donna are travelling to the wedding on a bus. And they filmed this scene. It exists, but it was deleted for timing reasons. And Bella Emberg played the character of Mrs. Coote, who had previously been in Series 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know Mrs. Coote by name, but you will know her by character. She was in She was in Love and Monsters as the character when Elton is like, how am I going to find this one girl in a city of millions? And she's like, oh no, that girl, that's Rose Tyler. She lives just down there. Her mother's Jackie.
Oh, yes.
And they had a scene where she interacts with the Doctor and Donna on this bus on the way to the wedding, and they cut it, and I'm devastated. This is something I would love to see. I'd love to see this.
That would have been a nice little callback, a little Easter egg there for people who are really paying attention.
I think that would have been so funny. What's your scene you'd want to see? What's yours?
Something I'd like to see. I think the one in childhood I always really wanted for some strange reason. I really want the Doctor to meet Jesus of Nazareth. And I knew they couldn't do it, but I just wanted to see how they'd approach it.
Your religious upbringing is showing.
I wanted Doctor Who to definitively answer for me the question of whether he was really a miracle worker or not. And I just wanted to know what would happen if they just observed Jesus giving a Sermon on the Mount from afar. The religious upbringing is shining through.
So thank you so much, dear listener, as always, for joining us on this fun little revisit to The Runaway Bride. But this has not been a fun trip for no reason. We have very specifically chosen this as we are kicking off Season 3 of Wholala, going towards the 60th anniversary celebrations of Doctor Who and beyond. And next week, we have a very exciting episode, as it's the first episode in our new series, Here's What You Missed on Who, where we're going to look back on moments of Doctor Who history that you may have missed leading towards the 60th. Now, I don't know about you, dear listener, but a lot of my friends who are similar ages to us that we speak to go, oh my God, I loved Doctor Who when I was a kid. I had all the toys, I watched all the episodes. I kind of stopped watching and it may have been, when Matt Smith joined, when Peter Capaldi joined, when Jodie Whittaker joined, but people sort of stopped watching this show, and we want to make sure the 60th is accessible for all viewers. So next week, we're going to be looking at Here's What You Missed on Who, the 11th Doctor, where we recap the entire era of the 11th Doctor as played by Matt Smith.
Something else we'd really love as well is if you have any feelings you'd like to share with us, you don't need to write it in text. You can share your voice notes with us. And if you'd like, we can include those voice notes in our next episode and we can react to what you're saying so we can hear your lovely voice as well. Spruce it up a little bit so it's not just us two. So if you've got any particularly strong feelings or interesting reflections on the era of the 11th Doctor, please do share those with us. You can send them our way and let us know if you're happy for us to include that in our next episode.
Exactly. You can reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Actually, I don't think you can send us DMs on Threads. Maybe you can.
No,
I can't keep up. Twitter is X now.
Instagram.
Everything's changing. Send it to us on Instagram, Twitter, or X, all of which are at Wholala Pod. Please send us your voice notes and be a part of Wholala with us. You can also rewatch old episodes of the podcast, as always, on our YouTube channel, which is also at Wholala Pod.
And if you enjoy this week's episode, you can help us out by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, something else. Leave us a nice review. It really helps us out with the rankings and such and finding new people, and it makes us feel nice. We're the only two checking these reviews, so we'd love to hear what you think.
Exactly. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next week where we go over Here's What You Missed on Who, the 11th Doctor.
Until next time,
I'm Sam.
And I'm Alasdair.
Bye.